Thank you so much for coming to this session by Varun. Varun is a managing partner at Evernile. He was debuted by the Asian Development Bank as an officer on special duty at the National Health Authority, Government of India, where he led the healthcare innovation strategy, health infrastructure strengthening through PMJ, financing and providing overall policy and strategy support to the CEO. Prior to that, he has also worked as a project lead for the International Innovation Corps, wherein he led the team for designing India's first universal health coverage scheme, Arogya Karnataka, for the government of Karnataka. Prior to that, he was deputed at the Niti Aayog. He was responsible for project management of the Digital Transformation Index and National Data and Analytics Platform developed by the Niti Aayog. In 2019, Varun was recognized as one of the UN SDG goalkeepers by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. In 2017, he was part of the Indian government youth delegation to Russia, wherein he led the discussions on digital transformation. The session is developing and commercializing digital health solutions and innovations. So have fun, make notes, and over to you, Varun.
Thanks. Thank you, Chirag. Okay, happy to be here. I think I need to use the mic because it is getting recorded. It's a smaller room, so I thought otherwise I could have just done without the mic. So largely the context of the session is to probably just share my learnings in the journey that I have had in terms of seeing health, especially the digital parts of the healthcare, from close quarters. So a lot of things that we will discuss, it would be from my observations. It is not a fact, I would say. It is rather my particular anecdotal experience. So there is a fair chance that you might have had a different one, or you might be having a different one. Very such a pleasure to be here, have you all here. As all of you might have heard, all of you are coming with a different background. So, the theme, when I discuss with the team here, I've tried to keep it a bit more open-ended, largely focused on, I think, which is actually the bedrock of how to really adopt the digital solutions, but more from a enterprise side, rather, from a patient or a consumer side per se. I think that is probably one of the biggest struggle. And as we go through a very scratchy deck, I have not put any designs. It is very plain content. Some of the slides might be right on the face, but I think that is how I want this discussion to be. I will be sharing my experiences, and I would absolutely love if you have any particular observation, any particular experience on that slide, you can just probably speak it out. I think let's just try making this entire discussion, whatever time that we have, a bit more engaging, and it would be much more fulfilling than for you to just hear me. It would be much better that if we can hear each other. So I think that is how I'm thinking about this session. I really want to be engaging, just not saying it for the sake of it, and I've tried to branch out the time like that, right? So okay, it's a very sort of a big title that we have. Can I get a do you have like a slider changer, or yeah, I can just do it? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So when I was thinking about it, and I also spent a large part of my time at Ayushman Bharat, largely thinking that there is Ayushman Bharat. So in a way, what Ayushman Bharat is that it's a payer of care, right? It's an insurance. Very, very directly, it's an insurance. Remove all the noise, remove everything else. It's an insurance, right? It's an insurance product, which is sponsored by public. So one of the big things that I was always thinking is that when public is pouring in tens of thousands of crores, how can it really benefit the modernization in the way healthcare is delivered? Now, when I talk about the modernization, it means that there are so many new devices, there are so many new digital health solutions, there are so many new let's say data analytics, wellness, a lot of this, right? So the idea is that how can every single penny that the government is infusing, how can it create much more value than that? Just to give you an example, every single rupee that we put in building bridge, it generates a 2.5x return on the economy, right? So how to think about the Ayushman Bharat as an investment rather than as an operating expenditure? It should not be thought as an expense, but rather it should be thought in terms of that, you are investing something which will help the wider adoption of the solution. And that was the big premise behind, what I did at Ayushman Bharat in terms of setting up the innovation unit, focusing on how to support healthcare solutions. But largely, I still feel that where we are, and I think it's a very silent healthcare crisis. I don't see a lot of people talking about it. I know some of you might be actively thinking, there are organizations who are actively thinking, but we are definitely in a very big crisis. And I realized the gravity of this when I moved more towards the financial side, because in my current role I do a lot about investment banking. So when I see the numbers, I realize that when you actually try zooming out, probably there is a very big crisis that is really looming into us, and I want to talk a bit more about that before we really dive into what can we do about it. So if you see this next number, this is a very interesting number. It's a 1.5%, and it's going to be very hard to really guess what that 1.5% is. But if you want to take a wild guess, what is that 1.5%? It is definitely not healthcare spending of the government, because I know that we are very used to that numbers. We typically start all our notes by saying that every year government is spending this much. It has got increased, but it's not the government spending. What do you think? It's a very wild number, but it's a super impactful number. When we benchmark it against some of the other countries and what is happening there. Any particular guesses? Yeah. Any one of you? Okay, return. Okay.
Percentage of the population
Mm-hmm.
has access to really good healthcare.
Okay.
Maybe out of all the health solutions that we are creating, only 1.5% is in terms of digital health, that we are actually incorporating technology and trying to do that.
Probably the closest, but still not there. Okay, so it's very difficult to guess, but I thought that is an important number, and probably as a collective group, we might be seeing this number for the first time, because when I saw it was also like that, aha. I never actually thought that it would be this dire, right? Yeah. So there are only 40 Series A startups, Series A healthcare startups in India, which have actually made it to Series A round as compared to the entire universe of startups. So there are only 1.5% healthcare startups which have been able to raise up to Series A round. The reason why this metric is so important is because it is showing what is the type of funding that is happening. That is number one. But secondly, what are the type of future innovations that we are going to see? Because at the end, if you look at at the very primitive or at the very first principle, if you look at it, if the businesses are not getting funded, they would not have the sufficient money to scale up their solution. If they do not have that, you and I, we are not going to see those particular solutions coming to life. Right now you are able to access a Practo or even a 1mg because, they had got the right funding at the right time. My challenge is that right now the universe that we have, there are only 40 of them out of 2,700 total startups, total businesses, right? And I feel that this is a very big sort of, it's a very black and white sort of a scenario which shows that there is something that is really going wrong here. It's not that, there are less healthcare startups that are, that people are starting. If you look at almost every venture capital, they would always have healthcare as a portfolio, healthcare as a focus. But you don't see a lot of them scaling up. So in a way, let's say if 100 are starting, there is a very small chance that probably only 1 or 2 are going to actually make it to the Series A. And which to me is a very big problem, right? And that's why, it really piqued my curiosity, to try understanding that, is this something which is there across the globe? Because I didn't want India to be an outlier, right? So that's why, again, did some deep dive into it and tried finding that, is it a general trend? Is it how the healthcare is? Yeah. And I found it's not a global phenomena. And the data that I found, again, which was a big aha, was this. That, and this was a big aha, that if you look at US, Now, US healthcare system is not a perfect, absolutely I agree to that. But if you look at the US, 53% of the total funding that has happened in 2024, it has happened for healthcare and life sciences startups. So there is definitely a big sort of a gap. And 53% is a huge because they have, they have got around 5.6 billion. So almost, 3 billion of funding in US has gone towards healthcare startups. So in India, you have 40 startups cumulative, which would have probably raised a certain, 3, 4, 5 billion. And in US, in 2024, and we are just, like 6, 7 months down the line in 2024, and they have already raised around, 2.53 billion. So the reason why this is supremely important is because healthcare startups are super R&D focused. There is a longer gestation time. So basically what I start right now, I will only be able to see the impact of it 4 or 5 years down the line. It is not a D2C. Or it is not like a, sort of a, you are selling apparels. It is something that has its own sort of a gestation period. And for me, this is a very, very big, challenge that we are right now grappling. So this is something that I thought would be important to really set the context. Yes, go on.
So I
Use the mic.
Yeah, I built for the US ecosystem. My startup is into the US ecosystem, and we recently raised our seed round, right? I think the biggest problem why VCs are spending money in the US, but not, I'm not sure about India, but why VCs are spending more on it, comparatively more in the US, is primarily because their healthcare sucks.
Absolutely.
Sucks, right? And all these VCs are US citizens or have been into the US for most of their lifespan. And the problem is and also it is very, very much linked to the insurance space. And to get anything outside insurance is super expensive, right? As compared to India, where I can get on a Practo by paying just like $10, as compared to, in the US, it would probably be like $100 or $300, right? The type of problem that they are solving with the capital that consumer can spend is very large, or the market is very big in the US as compared to India.
Correct.
Which I believe is primarily the reason why this number is 53% as compared to 1.5%.
Fair point. Yeah, go on.
Building exactly on what you said, he gave the US perspective. I would like to
Hello.
Building on what he said, he gave the US perspective. I would give another perspective to what you said. You said 53% funding ho raha hai in US companies and only 1.5% in India. Which might, if you say it like that, it might feel ki, acha, hum nahi fund kar rahe. But in India, the Indian government, the Indian systems, they are more focused towards strengthening the primary healthcare, the government systems, rather than going for the privates. So I think that is one perspective which we also need to understand and just not think that private mein hum nahi kar rahe, so we are lacking behind.
My challenge is, fair point. My challenge is, we still have, if you look at medical devices, what do you think, how much do we import in terms of the total medical devices percentage?
over 85% is my guess.
Exactly. My challenge, it really comes from this particular data points, right? That if we are having such a solid indigenous, R&D ecosystem, everything is going, well, why is that not translating in adoption? This particular parameters are like proxies of what is really happening, because trust me, the people who really exactly do a black and white differentiation with regard to whether it is working or not are the people who are going to put the money. Any particular government office that you go and showcase your innovation, I can write it down right now. They will say, this is great, keep building. Can I get money? No, I can't give you the money. So the only people whose opinion that one should really take it by fire are the people who are actually ready to put their skin. And the people who are not ready to put their skin in the game, they are just supporters. I'm not blaming. I come from that government background. I have done that probably. Like, I've never told a startup that this is bad. But when I'm on the other side, you know, when I have to really, you know, walk my talk, then I can say, "Arey, this is not working," right? So that is where my problem is that till now we are at 80%. I don't want that to still keep on happening in the next 10 years. Yeah.
I have a question. So, on the past slide, the number that you say showed like 1.5%. That is a cumulative number of all the Indian startups funded.
Yes.
I want to know how many Indian startups which got Series A funded in 2024, and out of that, how many were healthcare startups? Then we can make a fair
Very
comparison.
Few. Hardly any. Very, very few. If I would have done 2024, this number would have been abysmal.
So,
Very, very few. I will tell you, let me give you one more sort of a important metric, right? India has 114 unicorns, from 113, 114, okay?
yeah.
Out of that, there are only 5 healthcare startups which are unicorns, okay? Out of that, the 3 healthcare startups which are there, their primary market is US, which happens to be, one is Innovator, second is Citius Health. Citius doesn't work, you know, a lot in India. It's a digital health startup, one of the, you know, very good ones. And third, you know, I'm forgetting the name, but again, it is more on the B2B enterprise solution whose focus is, you know, towards India. So even from the unicorn standpoint, the reason is that capital is such an important play in commercialization, and it really shows where you are standing. Everything else, I think it's a, you know, it comes in the ancillary ecosystem, but that is something that I feel is the biggest indicator of what you are doing, what you are not doing right. Yeah.
I think the question as well as to some extent what I think. It's also about the trust and regulatory
Yes.
stability,
Absolutely.
right?
We'll discuss a lot about that, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Like for instance, UPI is great and it's doing really well in India. Came up by the government after a lot of private players were blocked. Like we didn't get paywall. There are a lot of like people who were using UPI as a concept way before we came up with UPI, but they were not allowed to launch in India.
Got it.
Is there that kind of distrust within VCs that the
Correct.
the
Very
government can
interesting.
block you?
So as a
create their
group,
own-
we will figure out that what is going wrong today,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And we'll try to figure out that, you know, what are some of those pitfalls that, you know, we should try avoiding. Yeah, so that's a good way to, you know, segue into the next slide. Yeah, so this is a big open question, right? That where, so now we have seen where we are, right? I would love to understand from you, where do you think we are struggling? And the way to do that is, let's try to map out the journey of what a solution. And, you know, I'm not talking, you know, of a startup, but let's say whatever you are developing, you know, some of you are working in some foundation, they might be developing a digital health, some of you are working in a healthcare company, some of you are building something. So I want to understand right from the idea, you know, one day you get up, you get a aha moment, this is, you know, what the country needs, and that is how typically it happens, right? And then from that, you are, you know, going towards, let's say, an IPO. For me, I'm just thinking IPO as a proxy for a scale, right? So what is that journey in terms of the healthcare? Because the journey in healthcare is very different as compared to, you know, again, like a fintech, D2C, you know, e-commerce. So it's very different. Help me understand, what does that journey look like? What do you think? Go on.
Starts with a clinically unmet need in the market. What
Yeah.
are you trying to solve for?
Yeah.
And typically, at least as far as I understand, problems always exist, and you can't create a problem. It already exists, and there is a solution to it. So you identify the problem, and then you see what do you want to do exactly to solve it, and then come the next steps.
Okay. So there is, let's say the first is unmet need.
need.
Okay. So when you have an idea, you try understanding whether there is an unmet need for that or not, right? Okay. Okay. Let's say validate. Okay. So we validate it. Okay.
patient journeys as well.
Sure. Okay.
I think that's something we can do more
Got
in
it.
India in terms of just patient journeys, understanding kind of customer journeys, and those what are the different journeys in a particular piece, irrespective of unmet need.
Okay. Yeah.
Once the unmet need is identified, validated, we need to understand who is going to, like for example, I'll just give an example.
Hmm.
आवाज नहीं आएगी ना रिकॉर्डिंग
I'll just try to explain what I'm trying to say by an example. Like, for example, we go to a community जहाँ पे ASHAs are working, ANMs are working. ASHAs, they are not very well educated. Even if they are well educated, they struggle with your digital goods such as even mobile phones.
Got it.
So unmet need क्या हुई कि हमें एक community में HRP को identify करना है, उनको register करवाना है. That's an unmet need. Validated है, perfect. Provide कौन करेगा service? ASHA. So we need to identify the person providing the service.
Got it.
We need to strengthen her पहले.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
strengthening does not mean कि उनको digital goods दे दिए. Like we did diagnostics in Chhattisgarh, उसके अंदर we were like कि we went and we were like कि हम इन्हें training देंगे आशास को digital health पे. What happened was they did not even have phones.
Makes sense.
So
got it.
वो जो
So validating
diagnostics
whether
है.
there is even a problem or how big is that problem.
No, we know the problem.
Okay, but how
validated
big is
है.
that problem? Validated.
No. It is validated. We know how big is. But do we? Yes.
But
we
that-
need to engage
So
the
you are
right
going
people.
towards solutioning. I think
Yeah, that is the chronology, no?
I
Yeah.
I would want to probably think about in terms of the journey right now, right? Not in the solutioning. We will come to what you said. We will exactly come to that. That is like
No,
super
I'm
important.
telling you the journey only. Why? Because once the need is validated, we need to understand the stakeholders.
Sure.
We need-
Okay.
yeah.
Understanding the stakeholders.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. That is the point which is there. Okay. So we are doing a stakeholder. Okay.
One problem is that market sizing.
Market sizing. Sure. Okay. So we are still at the very first thing, right? You have just woken up and 6 months down the line, it is going to take 6 months, by the way. It is not something that you will be able to do in a month, right? So let's say, we do market sizing, okay?
You can also start with innovation.
Okay, sizing.
I think the whole first point comes under situational analysis. Would be the-
Sure.
What? Yeah, so going backward. No, it's not backward. Sometimes, so it can also start from innovations.
Innovation as in?
As in, for example, something new comes to market and then people think about implementing it. For example,
This is,
GPTs.
okay, hold that thought. I really want to come to that. That is going to be a big aha moment, by the way. Do hold that thought, right? I'm just going to write innovation part. Okay.
So the two other important things, at least that I have come across,
Yeah.
is one is regulatory stuff that goes around, and second is
Regulatory. Okay, so now we are moving towards the next part, right?
Yeah.
So then you are saying, so unmet need, then we are going directly to regulatory.
yeah. So I mean, at least the thought process that I have is
Yeah.
first to identify unmet need, second to identify whether the scale is there,
Okay.
right? Third is to identify, I think what she said is around stakeholders, who are
Sure.
the stakeholders, and regulatory will come under this. And fourth is to understand whether what's the competitive landscape is there,
Okay.
right? What all players are basically
Sure.
building
So
around
this is
similar
all
things,
a part of your research, right?
right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, and also one of the very important things is, will the consumer pay for this stuff?
Okay. Got it. Okay. Just, because there is a lot of areas that I want to cover. The way I see this, and it basically includes this, like, what you said about the unmet needs, validation, once you are done doing the research, who are your competitors, how is the market, you speaking with some of the folks. The second thing that you will probably do is like, build some sort of a prototype. So I think that is a sort of a second stage, right? And until here, the journeys of every sectors are similar, right? Whether you are a fintech, you will also build a prototype, or whether you are a D2C, you will build a prototype. I think the complication starts after this, right? Which is that if you want to go and, probably say that, let me make it live. Like, if I'm selling let's say a bottle of juice, I can still do that, right? Just getting like a couple of licenses. But if I want to do that with healthcare, is that possible? Correct. And that is how this journey start deviating. And that is what makes healthcare such a difficult sector. Because then you start the journeys of getting all the trial approvals. You have a POC, you first go, you start, probably talking to some of the clinicians, some of the hospital infrastructure, try seeing whether it is even giving the results that it's supposed to do, and is it safe to use? Okay, in some of the other sectors, you don't really need this type of a clinical trials per se, right? So then you have clinical trials. In clinical trials, you have got your data, right? Once you, what is the type of data? Whether it is, even making the same type of impact that it should be, then you again do a clinical trial.
No, but it depends. I mean, it generally you are focusing just on drugs, right?
No, this is for everyone.
Medical device, yeah, but
Not even medical devices. Even if you look at digital health, okay, there is no establishment in the country that is going to say, hey, you implement it on my personal healthcare record, or even if, let's say InsurTech, which is a slightly bit different and a bit easier than healthcare. Everyone is going to ask for, I want to understand what is the type of effectiveness of the solution that you have developed. You take any particular sector, subsector in healthcare, they're going to ask for, is it safe to use? Does it do what you are telling me? If yes, give me the report. I'm not going to do a POC otherwise. I'm not going to do I'm not going to use for commercial adoption per se. I'm just going to test it.
I mean, again, depends, not necessarily. I mean,
tell me a solution where you think,
Yeah, so for example, let's say, I'll tell you what I'm building. I'll tell you what I'm building, right? So, we are into prevention healthcare, right? And what we build is, we collect your data from all your testing vendors, be it your blood testing, DNA, sequences, so on and so forth, right? And will give you insights on your risk factors, right? And there is no there is no right or wrong answer here. I mean, risk factors can be,
correct.
It's a probability, right?
It's a very generic space in that case then.
Yeah,
because then you are not promising what you're doing.
No, we are promising. I mean, based on all the empirical evidence, we can say based on...
Exactly. So empirical evidence, how are you collecting empirical evidence and who is validating that?
That is data, right? I mean...
That is what... So someone needs to... You can't be a maker and checker. If you are a maker, you need to have a different checker.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah.
So as you scale, there is someone who is going to tell me, who is going to come to you and tell me, Acha, what is the sanctity of a data, who has validated it? Now you can't say that, this is something that I have validated it on my own.
Rely on publicly available data that is provided by FDA, that is provided by...
Very, very difficult if you do not have your own results to prove. Secondary research doesn't work. As you scale, as you talk to more clients, you will start realizing, and trust me, probably healthcare clients are, the most, they are most risk averse, whether it is government or whether it is normal hospitals. And that is the reason why there is a big switching cost, because no one wants to, try out new things. So, yes. Yeah. I think we take this.
Yeah. So, also on a similar note, building in the preventive health space and preventive health to primary health, so to say. So, within the maternal healthcare, reproductive health and maternal healthcare space, there is a whole lot of validation there as well, right? If not clinical trials, we're constantly trying to streamline patient flows, right? So in the telemedicine space, just come up with the most effective and most streamlined patient flow is also a process in itself, and it is something that needs to be clinically validated constantly. Yes. So I think that's also really important. Correct. I mean, it depends on the kind of solution you're building, of course, certainly, but all sorts of innovation needs to be validated.
It needs to be. Correct. You have a point very quickly so that we can then...
I just have a question actually. So in this context, right, say you're building something like what you have, like a period tracker, pregnancy tracker, child health tracker. Do you also, what kind of validations are needed when you're just, what you're doing is you're helping, say, a customer put all their data together and have a repository of that, which can then maybe you link it either through ABDM, whatever, now we're creating all of these APIs. For that kind of a solution, what would the environment look like? Like I just do the room to you.
I think if you ask me, I think digital health standards, I feel that they are very fluid right now. But the problem with fluid standards is that it can happen in a way to what happened in the GST and the gaming industry. The regulator can come and bite you. That, it's not that, because I did not tell you, you had a fiduciary responsibility. So, you come in, and that is why the gaming sector is pretty much dead right now. 2 players right now, which used to have like 25, 30 players. So, whichever business has a regulatory arm, the regulator feels that it's a de facto responsibility of the maker that he will keep on, abiding by the regulations that I have not created. And this is the problem of that regulatory sphere businesses. And that's why I say that because healthcare is such a highly regulated business, right now we might think that digital health, it is a new thing, it is not regulated, everyone is inviting innovation, so let me do it. But trust me, as soon as it scales, as soon as the government sees that this is scaling, what are our regulations to it? This is going to happen. Okay.
Yeah, because of there being this general lack of medical devices, or so to say. But in the space that I'm involved in, wherein I'm trying to bring forward a digital health solution, which is largely primary health based, people are going for like standardizations like NABH as well. So there is certainly like a need for like a digital health arm of NABH or something of that sort to be established in that sense.
And the QCI has come up with something like that, right? Like there are now quality standards for digital health frameworks and all those things. So the regulator is, is awakening. Okay. So this is just a general thing to the room that we need to be very careful about that. Okay, very quick comments, guys. I have a lot of slides to cover. I never thought that, Okay, yes.
Don't you think that it happens all the time like this? The policy is
It does.
Because innovation is happening, there's a lot of R&D happening.
There's a lot of R&D time to time happening and backlash coming. Like we had recently DPD came in, and then there were backlash. और फिर अभी data की जब बात हो रही थी, तो I think we are on to developing a large database with ABHA, and APIs linked with multiple applications. But I have decent faith coming along in India's health story.
I agree. The problem with faith is that even Vijay Shekhar Sharma had a faith that RBI will never cancel, the Paytm's bank license. And this is a very thin line. And as someone who is going to be in a role who is going to be pioneering the scale up and commercialization, on the back of the mind, always keep thinking about that. That, this is something which is, whenever you are in regulated space, do know that the regulator will arise and it will only happen within a span of 2 days. So you really need to be, very much prepared about that. We'll take that last comment, yes.
In addition to all of you, I just want to talk about one of the ABDM initiative, that is Scan and Share. As we were talking about that, it is not totally related to clinical terms. Like we do not need to do all of the clinical trials to it, but it is one of the gap. Like I think you must have known Scan and Share. Yeah, it was totally based on to reduce the queue line. Yeah,
sure.
So why don't we create such solutions? Why don't we work in such solution which work in such gaps, which do not require such a clinical trial, heavy trial thing.
Correct.
So
I agree.
I think we can work on that also, and maybe they would work fine also.
Sure. So I think if you look at the core healthcare, let me put it like that, right? So one is your clinical trial. Once you are done with the clinical trial, then any entity is gonna ask you, okay, this is working, it is safe to use. Is it commercially viable? And that is a big challenge again, right? Because then you also have to ensure that there is a feasibility. It should not happen that what you are giving, it is going to increase the cost of the operations of that particular operator by 10x. Okay? It can be like, the best is that, and trust me, this is India, so I've seen us as consumers, whether it is biggest of the hospitals, we are probably the most super cheap consumers which are there. And वो बोलेंगे ये सब ठीक है, but क्या ये इससे सस्ता है? क्योंकि मेरी यहाँ पे there is a switching cost. मेरे को आपको अगर लेना है तो ये आपका सस्ता होना चाहिए और अच्छा भी होना चाहिए. ठीक है? So that is another like a big step, like the commercial trial per se. And then once that is done, once you have a foot, and trust me, this is not something that you will do in like a 6 months. Unfortunately, this is something which is a 2.5 years journey. And in parallel, you also need to sustain yourself, the team. You need to have an office. You need to, travel. You need to, give fees to the clinicians for doing the trials. You need to, apply to the ethics committee. Then you need to do commercial trials. You need to build prototypes, and you need to get something manufactured. Like if you're in a med devices or if in a digital health, you need to pay for your, servers and clouds and all, and everything you are doing on your own, right? So if you look at it, the time a healthcare startup spends in that pre-series sort of a form, it is much longer as compared to the other conventional ones. And that is the reason why we see that number of that 1.5%.
Why do you think that's not the case in the US?
With the US, what is happening is that there is a lot of appetite with regard to two things. One is adoption, second is R&D. In adoption, and we'll talk a bit more about it, is that there are very standardized pathways about how I'm going to adopt. I'm going to talk a lot about public procurement because it's also one of my favorite things to do. And the second thing is that there is a lot of funds which actually go into R&D, even from the, like there are structured VC funds which are actually going to be investing 3, 4, 5, 10 millions at a R&D level in US, because they know that if I invest right now, and if they make something good, it will get adopted. The problem here is that there are not enough R&D funds because they know that even if I invest right now, I don't know where this will head towards.
No, but we can always raise from the US also, right?
Very challenging. How many of them would have done? What do you think?
I mean, it's technology, right?
Correct, but then you would need to get registered in US.
Not necessarily.
Very difficult. It hardly happens. Like if you look at, the entire healthcare ecosystem, how many do you think, when you are at a pre-seed level, how many of you think that, they have that type of connects, to reach out, to get them interested in something like this? Because India typically, it makes, I'm sorry, but it is true, we do not have that cutting edge R&D to what US has. What we are making low cost, high scale solutions, which for probably most of the reasons, like at least in the US, when it comes to the caregiving, probably it is not the best market. Digital health, absolutely. We have seen CTS, we have seen, like, sir, all the work happens in Noida, but their entire revenue comes from US. So that's a good model. For them, it makes sense, to raise there. But if it's a medical device, very difficult. Very difficult.
Also, I think India, where India
You only 10 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Quality issues.
Correct. That is also one big.
You just compare the Scandinavian standards. You compare maybe Scandinavian standards are much better than US.
Can we expand it 20?
India lacks a lot, even in the Southeast Asian. So
Yeah.
वहाँ पे एक question
Also,
है
one
बचेगा.
small point, and I've just been told that we have 20 minutes left. Yeah, I never expected that. Is that?
You asked us to be very.
You said.
Yeah, I know. I never thought that you were so much charged up. No, good. Please do. I think we can extend more. That is absolutely okay. If it is okay with him. Yeah.
If you are willing to step down.
Yeah. Even if you like one note, the same thing happens in the drug space.
Yeah.
What is our drug industry doing? Only manufacturing. R&D, very handful. Our drug companies only wait for one date, when are the patents gonna get expired. As soon as that happens, we get into that bulk manufacturing. But that is our model. Yeah, correct. Yeah, go. Okay, so at Ayushman Bharat, when we were doing this innovation unit, Abhishek used to be a part of it. We had a whole full-fledged team. This is a big issue then. We had commissioned a big study. Some 350 startups had applied. We spoke to, most 40 promising of them. And we found out that, what are the big challenges that are happening. And again, this is an aha moment. They found the biggest challenge that they felt that they were not getting the right support was actually sales and marketing. And that is the reason why I thought commercialization is probably the most important theme, which is probably the bedrock of our industry, but we are not talking a lot about it. We keep talking about clinical trials, R&D, how to engage clinicians. Very important, absolutely no doubt. But perhaps one of the most important thing is, what is the North Star? For any particular solution, what is the North Star? What do people talk about UPI? People talk about how many transactions are happening, how many people are getting benefited. No one talks about what APIs have been used, or what team really worked on it. No one cares. Again, this is a very, white and black sort of a discussion that I'm having. Okay. Similarly to this, right? ABDM, it is great. I think it's a great effort. It's a great initiative. What is coming out? We have made 55 crores, ABHA IDs. I love it. What is coming out? Right? So that is something which is very important. That how do you really market it out? How do you actually urge people to organically adopt? Are hospitals organically adopting the solutions? And this is not only about ABHA, or the ABDM. Any particular solution, I think the litmus test is that, is there a natural pull for my demand, for the solution that I have created? right? And I think that is what I want to discuss, that, in terms of what are some of the things that, like how to really declutter the noise from the journey for any particular solution. Because I feel that in the healthcare, because it is also a sector which has a lot of impact investments, not-for-profits involved, I feel that we try a lot of times to make it a very, heavy social sector. And the problem with that is that, it can probably get some particular grant flowing, but the problem with that is that a lot of times, because of this noise, businesses are not focusing on the core thing, which is how to sell what they are making at a profit, which is my basic problem here. So that is what, we are going to probably, and I'm going to make it really quick because we have less time. So this is just, again, there are playbooks for every, if you even go, almost all the VC funds, they will say, hey, this is our D2C playbook, Inc. 42, these are the best, D2C startup, fintech startups, this is the playbook. There is no one who has actually made how to, have a playbook to scale up your healthcare startups. So I feel that that is something that, we really need to do, and it needs to be very simple, right? You declutter the noise from the journey. So we are going to go through it really quick. Again, this playbook, these points are based from my learnings. You can always add on to it. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing is that, a lot of times what typically we do is that we have an idea, and a lot of startups that I have seen, they quickly go and develop a prototype. A lot of times I have also seen, and this brings to that innovation point, a lot of times, they would have observed something and they would build something without even researching that whether there is a need or not. So a lot of incidents that I recollect, I have always asked, अच्छा आपने किससे बात की, कितना कहाँ कौन इसको use करेगा, who are the hospitals? बोले कि वो 2 डॉक्टर से बात की थी मैंने, उनको लग रहा है कि ये होगा, मतलब इसकी need है. So you are actually investing a lot of resources in building a prototype, but you are not networking enough. And the best place to network, and again, this is a bit sort of a pitfall, mostly all the innovations, digital health, med devices, whatever it is, as soon as I ask, where are you looking at doing a pilot? They will say 2 colleges. One is AIMS Delhi, second is PGI Chandigarh. Sir, AIMS Delhi में हमारी बात चल रही है, वो हो जाएगा. But the idea is that you have such a big local healthcare infrastructure around you. Tap those guys. उनको रोज जाके कोई ऐसे भी जाता नहीं है बोलने innovation. They will also feel happy. The problem is that we are not localized in our approach. Okay, there are so many clinics, there are so many doctors, there are so many hospitals nearby us. Engage them, talk to them. Is this a problem that you are facing? What you are mentioning about the stakeholders, what you mentioned about, that gap analysis, right? So talk to them, first engage them. Make them like, let it be a co-created thing so that they also have some skin attached in the game. Hota ye hai, engineers come together, make a prototype, and then they go and search for doctors. Okay, can you also join the team because we want to go and raise a fund? And then doctor said, ठीक है, मेरे को भी आप 5% दे दो, and then, let's go and raise a fund. This is the biggest problem. You cannot first make the product and, the people who you think would be a cook of that. That does not work like that, right? So this is the first important thing that I realized that, we really need to have that type of engagement of that ecosystem right from the start before even we start, making the prototype. Okay. A lot of things that we have discussed, what you were also mentioning about the stakeholder, that one is that understand currently what is the flow of value and flow of capital. See, anything that you are making, okay, in a way it would be like a incremental innovation or a disruptive innovation. It is not something that, let's say, it's very difficult, like OpenAI is probably an outlier, okay? But mostly the innovations that you are going to be making, there is already something that is happening. Okay? So let's say, I'm just giving a very random example, pregnancy tracker. Okay? So there must be some way right now also that, people are still counting. So you figure it out, what is that? Are people paying for it? Who are the players who are doing that, right? Who are the people who are paying and how much? So figure this out in your mind that, acha, this is the ecosystem, this is the market that I'm going for. Again, this is very important because a lot of times people make things for which no one is ready to change their behavior only. You will probably make, like, I have a very I have a very dear friend. He has made something like a pill box, automated pill box. Okay, it's a great idea. But the thing is that there is no one who feels that type of a need, or probably the market is not large enough. And right now what happens is that there is no one who is actually paying for something like that. वो अभी क्या होता है that they will bring 4 or 5 plastic containers for senior citizens. They will put the tags and the entire work is happening like that. Okay? But there is no propensity for them to pay. So that is something which is very important for you to figure out, that whether there would be some sort of, and the only way that you can figure it out is by talking to a lot of people that you think are going to be the potential customers. So that is something that one should really figure it out. Oh yeah, this is very important, right? Do pilots, but don't end up, and trust me, this is the most important thing, don't end up in a vicious cycle of pilots. Oh God, I can't tell you, how many startups for the last 5 years they are only doing pilots. Because whenever they do a pilot, they don't document it properly. They don't understand that the pilot that I'm doing, I should put my 100% resources only on one particular pilot that is going to bring me the value that I need. What they will do is that they will go to, some days they will go to a government organization. They will go to a municipal commissioner. They will go to a health commissioner. Sometimes they will come to, Delhi. Then they will go to hospitals. Everywhere, everyone is going to say, this is good. This is great. Let's do a pilot. So then there are startups which are running 3-4 pilots in parallel. And the problem with that is that you are going to drain so much of your resources. Your money, your team, your time. You are not going to document it. And the challenge that is going to be there is that at the end of the day, the pilot findings, because you have not documented it, it will just be super hazy. So the 5th guy will also tell you to do a pilot. And this is how most of these startups, they don't scale up. This is like a big valley of death. We used to talk about this back I was at NHA. Is that this is something that, probably one of the biggest risks in commercialization. Yeah. Any particular point? Yeah, Divya, go on.
I have a question. So, not a question, I also feel that the point you raised on problem.
Oh. So, the point that you raised on that, yeah, so like problem statement that startups do not think through the problem in the market and do not do competitor analysis early on, so they end up making the prototype and then basically go to the market. Do you think that's also to do with the fact that there are so many grants available for the startups to develop the prototype at an early
I will
stage?
come to that. I have a slide on grants. I will come to that. And also the most important point in here is that who is going to finally sign off on the sanctity of the pilot? Is it going to be a doctor who is just a part of your team itself? Or is there going to be an ethics committee? And in the ethics committee, who are the members? What are their credibility? Do not do pilots if it is just, a sort of a local doctor who does not have an ethics committee, because the sanctity of the pilot will not hold. So you will need to keep on doing those pilots again and again. So don't do that. It's a trap.
I have just one point on this. I think it's also a mindset issue.
Yeah.
Because usually pilots are very economical for the end user. So generally what ends up happening is, okay, now this is cheap, let me get into it, and because it is also giving me some revenue.
Yeah.
So the vicious cycle keeps on happening.
Correct. So, and there's a very important point. A lot of times, a lot of establishment will say that, we'll also pay like a token amount for pilot. Don't get into it, because you are not realizing that you are spending your time that you could have done for actual sales. So don't get into it. Do limited pilots. Do it. Very important. But do document them to the T, so that you can keep on reusing those results. Oh yeah, this is again an important part. Clinical validation is important, but commercial validation is survival. At the end of the day, see, clinical validation will tell you that whatever solution you have, it is safe to use. It gives whatever is the necessary effectiveness, efficiency, whatever it is. But commercial validation will tell that the solution that you are putting, the solution that you are implementing, that is also a cost-effective solution for you to adopt. So this is a nudge towards adoption. very important. How the unit economics of your solution is going to impact the existing solution, your existing operations of that particular player, whoever is adopting that. That is something that will come out in the commercial validation. So if the clinical validation says that it has some 97% accuracy, your commercial validation will say that it will help you reduce the cost by 40%. And trust me, at the end of the day, the person who is signing, he will say कि अच्छा ठीक है, clinical validation effectiveness में 2-3% का ही फर्क है, लेकिन जो commercial validation है, that is 50% more viable, तो मैं ये करता हूँ. क्योंकि at the end of the day, please understand, healthcare, I hate it to say this, but healthcare is a business. It's a business. And the people who are going to adopt the solutions, they are also in this business. And they also have to survive and sustain. So we need to be very cognizant about it. Oh yeah, very important. Don't go on a over certification sort of a trail. As soon as you start, you have made something. People will probably start with like a CDSEO. So know which type of category you need to get into CDSEO. A lot of times when we chat, they say, "Arey, hum CDSEO kar liya, ab C or FDA 6 mahine mein we want to do it." Okay, why? Do you have a sales pipeline? Do you have US clients who have said that you get the FDA done? Do you have European clients? So build your sales pipeline first. Generate that interest before you go to FDA. Getting an FDA is a huge cost. Sometimes it's in millions. Okay. Same for C. So understand what certifications do you exactly require, and that understanding will only comes from the sales pipeline. So that is something that is going to be critical. Again, this is like a big sort of a driver of the cost for that particular solution which is there. So be very cognizant about it.
One point on
yeah.
The credibility that you get. So for a lot of people, it's more about, I don't know this one. For a lot of people, it's more about the credibility. And if your solution, if you can market it as standby notice, there's the
Right, sorry. So it's about credibility, right? So if your solution is valid, if you have FDA approval, or if best case you have a de novo approval, right? So in that case, the kind of access that you get increases dramatically, and honestly, it's easier to crack a foreign market than cracking the Indian market. So if you have that kind of sales funnel, as rightly pointed out, it's a good thing, but also there are benefits to having that.
I will tell you an interesting thing. We used to work with a robotic surgical company, very huge transactions. With the Indian CDSEO, you can get access to 120 countries. Even I did not know. And for us, that was like a big, sort of an opening in terms of the realization, because there are so many countries. Like, the company used to say Sri Lanka, Indonesia. We never think about these countries. They are huge markets. There are huge populations. We are so much fixated, and they are okay with the CDSEO. Okay, we are so much fixated that we have to go to this hospital in Texas, or we have to go to Baltimore, and our solution should be there in Johns Hopkins. It can be a part of that, but let the time go. Let it be like 4 or 5 years when you have very strong sort of a pipeline, and talk to the folks in US. A lot of times they might say, "Theek hai, because this is this type of particular device, we might not need the type of exact, let's say a de novo or something, because even in FDA there are different sort of certifications." So don't go and start investing a lot of your resources, because as soon as, even in a funding this thing, when startups are doing, they will say 40% we require for regulatory. When you ask what is this 40%, they will say we'll apply for FDA. But there is you don't have a client interest. Why do you want to go and do FDA? So be very sure about why you want to get this particular certifications.
But FDA is a proactive, right? FDA certification should be proactive, right? Not after a client request.
No. So basically, you should at least first talk and see if there is a client interest and adopt it after FDA. A lot of times.
My question is, FDA takes a lot of time.
Correct.
Right? Maybe 3 years or 4 years. Maybe.
FDA now, it happens within like 12 to 18 months. It also depends on the extent of the technology. Depends on the extent of the technology. Correct. If you have something which is going to take 3 to 4 years, then definitely build a very big war chest in terms of capital, and definitely expand to bigger, other markets. Don't jump into FDA, because then it's going to be super expensive. It is like a 3 or 4 years FDA. Yeah. But yeah, this is a slide, to grants. So grants are very encouraging. Max them out. Know every grant-making organization, but don't depend your survival on grants. The grants are great for like the first 18 months. When you are making prototype, when you are building a POC, doing some clinical trials. But if your business plan is that, I'm not finding enough people to pay, but I will keep taking grants from like PATH or BMGF, not happening. Okay, they will support you initially, I'm sure, but it cannot be a business model. Unfortunately, a lot of the technologies, because they did not do the first step of understanding who my buyers are, they have, even till today, they are trying to survive on different grants. It doesn't work like that. Because at the end of the day, it's a business, right? And probably the good part about healthcare sector is that because there is a social element to it, there are, grants that are available, which is a good part in all the, other challenges that we have discussed. So there's a silver lining, but use it judiciously, is what I would say. Yeah.
And I think right now grant and pilots loop is going in circles for all, because who cannot raise fund, they are relying on grants, so they are raising grants for conducting more and more pilots.
Correct.
So it's like equity free. So
the equity free. Correct. So, and don't also get adjusted to salaries from grants. They are very unsustainable. Okay. You don't deserve like getting like a 25-30K from the grant salary. Don't do that to yourself. Okay. Oh yeah, this is on public procurement. I'm going to take it really fast. So public procurements are a maze. Okay, a lot of people don't want to jump into maze. Absolutely understand. But there is also a bright side to it. Because once you get in, it's also very difficult for anyone else to get you out. Like I know Khushi Baby is doing something in Rajasthan with the state government. So I know that it took them time. But now it's also very difficult for a competitor of Khushi Baby to probably, come in the same, state government, procurements and all. So as you grow, I won't say that public procurement is the first thing which should be on your radar. Let's say 2 or 3 years down the line, when you have some, enough private clients, public procurement is something that you should definitely look at.
But are payments a challenge in public procurement?
Sorry?
Are payments a challenge?
Oh yeah, I will tell you, payments is something that is like the North Star. I will only think about payments. Like payments is not even a problem. The biggest problem is the risk aversion. They will not make, first is that they will not make tenders only to adopt an innovative technology. They don't know how to make it. They don't know what your device technology is. They would not know how to make you qualify. The second is, how will they make a pre-qualification criteria? They will make a pre-qualification criteria which is like 50 crore of revenue. Where will you get that? L1 agreement. So I've written about L1, right? That it needs to be on the lowest price bidding. How will you be? It's very difficult. But I think as you grow, 3-4 years, you have done several contracts. Trust me, this is a great payer, because at the end of the day, government is the largest healthcare payer in the country, and it is bound to be. So you would need to understand how to work with this particular giant in a mutually comforting manner. Because government is also very notorious for pushing you in that pilot cycles. So my suggestion is, at least for the early stage solutions, probably one pilot with government is okay, just for legitimacy. Don't try to push a lot into public procurement. It is very difficult. This is a 3-4 year sort of a thing that you should probably try, and then you will also have a wider audience.
Do you have any successful examples of like organizations who have like
a lot? So if you look at the so there are 2 of them. One in Gujarat I can know about. There is a company called Teco has done the same thing. There are several catches with Teco, how it was able to do it. I don't want to get into that. But it is something which has been able to do. The second is that if you look at all the different medical devices, the biggest consumers for them are public healthcare hospitals, because they do bulk procurement and they provide advance payments. So what they do is that they will order for 10 sort of, let's say CTs, new type of CTs. They will also give 3-year advance, which is never ever possible in a private setup. So there are also tenders like that, like the robotic surgery equipment that I'm talking to you about, right? They are doing a lot of government procurements now.
So one more additional question on that. So the examples that you gave, like Teco, apart from Teco, these are like most of the hardware devices.
Correct.
There is a, like, I will say, there is very less willingness to pay for software products.
There would be, if you look at, I will give an example of, let's say, the state health agencies. A lot of claim settlement softwares that they use, they are not developed in-house. They have been developed by agencies like, there are so many, like there is Vidal, so Vidal also probably sells the software, so all this at the end of the day, they are businesses, NHM, no one has the capacity to go and, do that IT development, so at the end of the day, they are also a business that has got into it, so similarly, like for a new age startup, let's say if it's an InsurTech, how do I display that effectiveness? It is going to take time. And that's why I'm saying that public procurement, you should only try entering when you have a steady set of revenue, when you have a steady list of clients, when your pilots are in place, when your regulatory approvals are in place, so that when there is an intent from the government to buy, at least all your checklists are ready. It should not happen that he says, Acha, I want to buy, but then you say, Acha, I'm not able to meet the pre-qualification, or I do not have this regulation or a regulatory approval in place. So that is the reason why public procurement is great, but it's a mid-term strategy. Yeah.
My question is more on the sense of how do you balance between private and public procurement? Because private procurement, obviously the private market is really segregated, and there's no way of cracking it at scale. Whereas with government, it'll give you big contracts, like you mentioned with Khushi Baby. It took them so many years to get procured in Rajasthan. But now to make a shift from one state to the other, it's been a challenge for them, right?
Correct.
So how do you basically scale? Like there's no simple strategy to scale in healthcare.
How you scale public procurements is actually fairly simple. Once a tender is out, you use that as a template for all the other states. That is a great part, because the bureaucracy only trusts the other bureaucrats. They are not going to trust you. And the great part about them is on the file they can write, I am following Rajasthan's tender. So the impetus should not come on me. That is what is the bottom line, right? How do you do the transfer of risk is what is required in the public procurement. So what you really need is one tender where you qualify, where you are eligible, where you are able to service the order. Once you do that, you are in the system. So you have to get a foot in the door, and then you can always scale. Of course, it will take time, but trust me, once you are there, even the tenders, a lot of times, even for procurement of MRIs and all, a lot of tenders, they make the mistake that they only write, we want to procure GE MRIs, or we want to procure Siemens MRIs. At the end of the day, because there's so much in the system. Yeah. I think this is the last sort of a slide. So, in terms of your entire sales strategy, it is not something which is a simple sort of a lead gen. It is a wider ecosystem play. How to really engage doctors, KOL, how to publish in journals, how to keep, talking about the clinical effectiveness. Focusing a lot on the cost in the public is not probably something that I've seen a lot of healthcare startups do. Probably the focus is a bit more on the, the clinical effectiveness side. So it's a wider ecosystem play that you would need to do. So you would need to train a cadre of salespeople like that. The healthcare sales team, it does not work on short-term incentives. Don't do that. It will backfire like anything. Give them long-term incentives. Tell them that if a customer is buying and then is repeating, you have a larger sort of an incentive in play. It doesn't work on a short-term sort of a cycle. Take salespeople who are ready to commit for a longer time. So it's a very long-term trust-building play, because here the most important thing in healthcare system is trust. Trust between a doctor and a patient, trust between an insurer and a patient. Everything that you do, every decision that you are making in healthcare system is guided by trust. You are going and buying Cipla's drugs because you trust Cipla. You are buying from that pharmacist because you trust him. You are going to a doctor because you trust him. A doctor is using an MRI because he trusts, Siemens or GE. So everything, the fulcrum of this is trust. And if you are able to establish the trust, and that's why healthcare is a long-term game. It's a game of 7, 8, 9 strong years being in the system. Generations go by in building this particular trust and retaining this trust. But if you are there, if you are able to do that, probably you will end up making, one of the world's top companies. And that is the reason why we see some of the biggest Fortune 500, whether it is in pharma or whether it is in med devices or, probably now digital health also, because they have been able to serve with that trust. So at the end of the day, your sales team would need to represent that particular trust, that particular brand's commitment to trust that you want to see in the long term. And that is the reason why it is not as simple as like how Byju's or, someone who is selling. It is not selling courses. What you are selling is at the end of the day, you are selling a promise of a healthy future. Whoever it is doing and whatever it is doing. So you need to ensure every single person in your organization, that person exemplifies that particular commitment. Yeah.
I used to work for Byju's for a few months. So right now, EdTech as an industry is dead,
at least in the traditional sense. So I see something similar happening with the health techs of the world. I won't name companies, but there are companies out there that are promising stuff that they can't possibly deliver. And I feel that as a practice should be culled at this very moment because that ruins the industry for everybody. For example, if you launch an EdTech company today, no one will take you seriously because everybody just knows Byju's. So before that happens to, the health tech ecosystem, I think we really should not allow that to happen.
So everything goes in the back of the operations, your pricing, your clinical validation, everything. But on the front, there is only one thing, which is trust. So that should be the core value. And I feel that is the biggest driver that at the end of the day will help you build and scale and, get your solution adopted. So yeah, so this is, largely from my side. I think I've taken much more time than it was expected. But yeah, very happy to, get an audience with you. And would love to keep the conversation going. This is my email ID. I'm available here. If there are any interesting ideas that you are toying around, if you're building something interesting, if you're looking for some sort of capital transactions and all, that is what we do. We typically do mid-markets. So yeah, we would love to hear from you. And if you require any help or any particular, I'm more of a person who will probably not, because it's been at least 2 to 3 years since I have a bit segued from the development sector. So I've left the niceness a bit, in the development sector, which I know is there in the development sector. I'm more in the middle of the capitalism. So if you want someone who can probably help you brainstorm, I'm always going to be there. But yeah, lovely chatting with all of you. And thank you for being so much energetic and so much engaging. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have a controversial question.
Yeah.
Just last one.
Thank you.
So, I actually missed the part where the regulator talked about where you said that suddenly, like in gaming industry, there was no regulation, and suddenly the regulator came and they regulated everything.
There was regulation. There was not enough clarity.
Yeah, even I lost money in share market during that.
Exactly. So I have bought Paytm at their listing, so I know what you're saying.
So my question.
Yeah.
My question is it lack of expertise or is it lack of will on their side?
Both.
Can you come in?
One is that they don't know how fast it will grow. Second is they don't know how to regulate it right. How do you regulate generative AI? No one has answers. But it will become one day you will suddenly get a regulation, and trust me, 100% you will get once you realize that how big the generative AI is. Thank you.